Finney with an early launch in the restart box.
He jumped the start. Yes, he did. He went way before the restart zone.
A lot of talk around the final restart, but how big of a gripe should the 19 team have? We'll break that down and more on NASCAR Inside the Race. Welcome to a new episode of NASCAR Inside the Race, presented by Consumer Cellular. Well, Todd, we got to see wet weather tires on an oval and our first overtime finish of the season. What did you make of the night race at Richmond?
I thought it was great. And in fact, that we went back on slicks on a racetrack we never would have raced on before. It only had about a groove and a half dry, but I thought it was great. It got the race going. We saw four wide action on the wet weather tires and turned it into a pretty good race.
Yeah, I don't think we're done with the development of the wet weather tire. I think it works well on the racetrack. It's how it's implemented that's going to change. At some point, it'll be the team's decision. I love to have pit road figured out where we don't have to have non-competitive pit stops. I totally get it for safety, but I think the pit stops are a huge part as we're going to show of the race and who wins the race. So I'd like to have that work on wet weather as well.
Yeah, I would too, but to the point, safety first, and let's take it a step at a time. NASCAR's done a good job of implementing wet weathers through the road courses, now rolling it into ovals.
Well, pit stops, we mentioned it was going to determine the race. That's why we wanted them in wet weather tires. Well, in the end, it was Martin Truex Jr. who dominated a late caution. Hamlin beats him on pit road, ends up winning the race. We're going to talk a lot about that one pit stop, but it was a day full of pit stops. So if you take a look and compare the 11 and Hamlin and the 19 of Truex, this is the last 5 pit stops. Other than one, the 11 outruns the 19.
Yeah, if you look right here, this is the only pit stop that the 19 beat the 11, beat him by a tenth and a half. If you look at the overall average here, Denny Hamlin about 4/10 faster than Martin Truex through these 5.
Yeah, grab a stopwatch, try to find 4/10 of a second. It happens very quickly, but that ends up being the difference. And at the end, the biggest gap between the two happened to be the stop that mattered the most, right around 1 second. So just compare these two pit stops side by side and see exactly what 1 second looked like. Remember, a week ago it was 3 seconds for Christopher Bell. This is what 1 second looks like.
Yeah, you add this up, you watch it full speed to start with, it doesn't look that bad, but that's the difference in coming out first from third or coming out second from first.
So the difference is 1.1 seconds in the end, so let's try to find it. Where is 1.1 seconds on a pit stop? So if we take a look, both drivers do a nice job into the box and really pretty close to the sign.
Yeah, got to the sign, you look at it here, really break this into right side around the car and left side. The right side here, we're at the point that the jack man down here for Denny Hamlin, he's dropping the car back down. You can see the car coming back down, and that's 3.5 seconds.
So let's move till the 19 drops. Not long, 0.3 of a second. Now the 19 car has come down. So on the right side, you mentioned 3 spots, right, transition, and left. On the right side, Truex's crew, 0.3 behind.
Yeah, 0.3, and that's not terrible, but it's a cumulative when we add all this up. So let's roll it forward from here.
So now around the car, we were 0.3 behind on the right. The jack man right here on the 11 car, he's kind of on the handle, basically signifying that the jack is going to go up on the right side, 6.27. We move forward, 6.57. I think the 19's on the same. So the jack men around the car, we'll call them equal. The same 0.3 they were behind on the right, they're still behind.
Yes, yeah, it looks like it's to that point. They've kind of maintained where they are, got that little differential, but coming forward.
This would have been manageable, but on the left side is where the time gets lost. So if we go forward and stop, I'm going to zoom in right here. Hard to see. The left rear tire clearly off of the 11. That kind of signifies, now listen, we don't look at front guys because they get to run in and wait for the car. The rear guys have to run around and chase the car. In a standard pit stop, the rear tire changer is normally the last one complete.
When you look at the rear tire changer and the fact that the jackman is one that hangs the left rear tire, this area is usually behind on the left side when you get to it. It's out here at 7.44. As you can see forward, we don't have the tire clear until 8.61.
And it's hard to see, but basically if you look right in the middle of that highlight, the wheel well is empty. The tire has been pulled out. So if you just kind of get rid of both of those, you see at 8.6. At this point, over a second behind where the 11 was done at.
Jackman actually is waiting to hang the tire here as quickly as Denny Hamlin's crew did it. I think there's a little bit of transition there that the Jackman's still trying to get ready to hang the tire. That brings some of that time differential back to just over a second.
We drop the jack, both cars lead. What is a good stop? I think 10-3, 10-2. You're thinking you're staying in the same position. You get down into the 9s, you talk about gaining positions. I looked at Richmond. There were 16 pit stops up and down pit road in sub 10 seconds. The 11 car had 4 of them.
Yeah.
So this isn't just one good stop that made the difference.
No, and they put it together. As you looked at the graphic we had, those were 4 of the last 5 stops for the 11 car, which would be money position. So really put it together there, and coming out at that time, they jumped not only the 19 car, but the 22 car, who also had something in the 10-9 range, got themselves positioned to control the race.
Control the race is the key, right? Because now we've got the lead for Denny Hamlin, but now it comes down to that restart. We saw Truex very upset after the race about the restart. Let's remind everybody. You see right here, right front row, we have Hamlin, Truex, Logano, Larson in row 2. I'm just going to play this through so you can kind of watch it real speed. Remember, the leader controls the race. He should start between the first line and the second line of the restart zone.
Yeah, and as you look at this, I mean, from the overhead view, Denny Hamlin left a little early. There's reason for him to leave early, and I agree with this being a no call. You've got to leave some sportsmanship back up. The restart zone's so short. Remember last year, we doubled the length of the restart zone for the first 5 races, trying to give the leader back a little bit of control. I think this is a situation where he took a little advantage.
So overhead, I think it's a little hard to exactly know when it all happens. Now we're on board with the 19 car. They're entering the restart zone. Remember, the first line, the 11 can go. If he hasn't gone by the second line, the 19 can go. So now here's the best way to do it. Let's put some audio in this. And what I want the listener to do is I want you to listen to the acceleration of the 11 car as he enters the restart zone.
Yes, you listen here.
So right there, car accelerates. As it accelerates, that means he's fired. He is gone. And here is the first line. So this begs the question, legal or illegal?
By the definition of the rule, it's illegal, but I don't see this any different than we're right in the middle of NCAA basketball tournaments. You get down to the last possession of the game, it needs to be a foul to be called. And I think in this situation, Denny's looking at the whole environment. Part of it being the 19 car, a lot of it being the row behind him. I think if we go back and look at that, I think you've got to give him some leeway to control a restart so that he has the advantage that he earned, his pit crew earned him on pit road.
So first of all, I want to get my opinion in on this. I agree. By the letter of the law, Denny Hamlin absolutely went a car length early. I don't buy tickets to see the referees make call or the sanctioning body make rules. I believe that Denny Hamlin knows this, and that's why he went on the early side. I think this is a call that NASCAR is not going to make unless it's egregious. I don't think it's egregious. Remember, we went frame by frame, yes, moment by moment, and brought it down in slow-mo. NASCAR is officiating this in real time. I do believe, though, this will draw a conversation from drivers to NASCAR saying, hey, okay, Denny got the one freebie. Maybe we're going to start calling it a little tighter.
Yeah, and we're talking about 30 feet here. It's a car length and a half. He went maybe a car length and a half early, but yes, it's one of those situations. But as we look at this on the overhead, before we hit play on this, I want you to look at the gap that we've got between the second row and the first row. It's almost a car length. When you look at this and look at the run that Joey Logano and Kyle Larson have coming to that restart zone, Denny Hamlin's looking in his mirror and seeing that these two guys are going to put him in a position that he's got to anticipate making a reaction to.
Yeah, so if I stop it there, the 22 is almost all the way to the 11's bumper, and we're still, just to remind everybody, there's the start of the restart zone. So we're still, I don't know, a couple car lengths away?
We are, but he's got momentum coming to him, and we talk about this. This goes back to the old bracket racing thing. You know, a Corvette doesn't outrun a station wagon that has a 3-second head lead on him at the drag strip. That's what Joey's doing here. He's got a couple mile-an-hour speed on him. So does Kyle Larson. That's actually the second row, I think, is dictating that Denny has to go early.
Well, and I also want to point out, you mentioned the second row. I want to point out Truex. So Truex, you know, he actually does a really nice job. The first time I saw this, I thought he had laid back a little bit more. I thought he was more around the door number. That is not the case. He's only around the right front tire, which is pretty standard. So if you're Truex, we know how Denny Hamlin won the race. If you're Truex, how do you win the race? In my opinion, you lay back 3 or 4 feet, and as you enter the restart zone, you start to roll. I mean a mile an hour. It's not much. Because if your momentum is going forward a mile an hour faster than the leader, then when you both step on the gas, you're going to carry that mile an hour all the way down into turn 1. These are 2 veterans. The amount of race wins on the front row is outstanding. And that's why I like the no call, because I like the artistic, the human element of the driver.
And I feel like Martin Truex, when we looked at that, we played it back several times to listen to it. He may just starting to be picking up a little bit of momentum coming to him. He's 3 feet back. He knows that NASCAR won't call that. But I think if you look at it, if Denny waits until he gets the restart zone, Martin's going to have that little bit of run coming to him.
This is how the guy in the second row gets the lead. I'm going to play this full speed. I want to be clear, the 11 does not slow down. When I play this full speed, it's going to look like the 11 slows down. This is everyone else speeding up. As you enter the restart zone, look at everybody crawl up to the 11. I mean, it almost looks like the 11 brake checks before he goes. That is not the case. That is everyone else anticipating what's coming and tries to get a rolling start on the 11.
Yeah, and actually the momentum that Kyle Larson had coming to it actually transferred to the 19 to keep him side by side with the 11.
The other thing Truex mentioned, we haven't talked about this yet. What's your opinion? He felt he got run up high. I mean, without a doubt, he's high. Do you think this is fair or foul for the 11 and the 19?
It's a green, white checker restart. I would expect my driver to use him up a little bit there. You're in a position, you're not side by side, you've got 3/4 of car length, you're dictating where it is. He left a lane out there, he didn't leave the preferred lane.
That's where I'm going to stop this right here. If Denny Hamlin is 3 or 4 feet closer, 5 feet closer to the wall, then I call foul that he didn't leave the 19 a lane. He did. Now, the angle's not very good. He definitely didn't help the 19 out. And if I'm Truex and James Small, I am not happy. I dominated this race. The caution cost us. We didn't have the best pit stop. The 11 definitely went early. Now he's running me. I mean, that's pennies on top of pennies on top of pennies. Eventually, you have kind of broken my will, and I'm going to lose my mind, and that's kind of what we saw out of Truex. What I love, though, is here's a driver late in his career who still has that fire to win a race. He is, Larson mentioned it, probably the most respected driver in the garage. He, I believe, is one of the cleanest, if not the cleanest. And I think that's why this bothers him so much, is I'm not sure Truex would do it to someone else.
Yeah, I don't think if the roles are reversed, they happen that way, but I think Denny wins more of those situations than Martin does, just because he's willing to race the way that everybody in the field at this point, I won't say everybody, the majority of the field races that way.
Well, it was Joe Gibbs Racing. They went to victory lane with Denny Hamlin, but at some point during the race, I thought it was going to be Christopher Bell. Started kind of mid-pack, drove to the front, had good speed in the 20.
Yeah, definitely a racetrack, again, that they had great pace. Execution, I think, ended up costing them.
So I actually wonder, if we take a look at the 20 car, so this graph here, the white dotted line at the top is the leader. The purple line is the 11 of Denny Hamlin. The yellow is the 20 of Christopher Bell. The reason I want to start talking about this is I wonder if the 20's decision to pit when he did in that final stage, the first pit stop being a little bit later, like 7 laps after the leaders, if that wasn't a telltale for the 11 later. So if we take a look and we really focus in, the 20 of Christopher Bell comes to pit road, first time under green in the final stage, has a pit stop, comes out. He is basically 8 seconds behind the leader. You can see right here, Denny Hamlin is what, 0.6 of a second behind? Bell is 0.8 of a second behind.
Yeah, definitely in one of those situations. But this is where he got the speeding penalty.
So he comes in, serves a speeding penalty. So this is going to shock people. He was 8. Now he is 24 seconds behind. So crazy enough, the way Richmond works, because you pit basically off turn 4. You enter the racetrack in the middle of 1 and 2. You run almost an entire lap. You only lose 16 seconds. You would think it'd be like 30 or 40 seconds. You lose 16 seconds doing a drive-through without stopping.
Drive-through. It's almost 30 seconds if you do the pit stop with it, but here it's 16-second penalty. Ends up just over a lap down and drove his way back forward.
Just over a lap down, drives forward through the leaders,
yes.
Has another green flag pit stop as the leaders do, and then before the final yellow, because remember that whole happened to change the finish, he had driven this all the way back to 14.6 seconds. So he has made up,
if you take the 16-second penalty away, he's 2 seconds to the net positive here.
So the reason I wonder if this matters is if we take this run and we move it up and we assume that he comes off pit road.
Just take the drive-through penalty away from it.
That's right. And we connect the dots, which is basically what we did, and we really focus up here. That 3/4 of the way through the run, the 20 car crosses.
He takes the lead right there.
Now, there's a few things. Look, traffic does change. If you're racing the guys for the lead, it does change. But the simple fact is the math works.
The car had enough speed to put this process together to say there's a formidable chance that he would be the leader at that point.
So I'm not going to say Chris Gabehart did or didn't, because I don't, Chris isn't going to show me his poker hand, nor should he. But I will tell you that when the 20 had the penalty, he came out behind the 11, came out behind the leaders, drove past the leaders, and drove off with 7-lap fresher tires. So if we look later in the race, the 11 of Denny Hamlin comes 9 or 10 laps after the leaders. Now, it doesn't work out for him because he gets stuck behind Logano and kind of gets stalled out. He ends up winning the race on a pit stop, but Math had the 11 running the 19 down and passing with about 10 laps to go.
And if you look at it, the math piece is Chris Gaypart did it. He took what was left of the race, he split it in half. And that's, if you look at it, you're using the best part of 2 sets of tires that way. The rest of the field kind of short pitted that to try to cycle forward. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, assuming everyone has to stop one time in the stage, the determining factor is when do you stop? Do you stop short? Do you stop long? So let's just talk about this in general. So if we assume this is how long we have to run, right? All the way across here, we'll say that's 100 laps.
Yep.
We'll say in the middle here, we're going to call that lap 50. That's the halfway point.
Yep.
So the simple strategy, the strategy that everyone seems to employ, we're going to give it to the blue. He's going to leave. He's going to go, and before he gets to halfway, he's going to come to pit road, get some new tires, and then he's going to run all the way to the finish on those new tires, getting slower before he gets to the finish, which is somewhere out here to the right. Yes. That is the shortstop strategy. The concept is the guy that does it the other way, he's going to basically be on top of the blue, right, or really right next to, looking good, feeling good, feeling good. He comes at halfway, so he comes down here and he gets some new tires. And then he runs out and continues to run and run and run and run and run. So the advantages to each. The shortstop guy is here. Is this right?
Yes.
So
yeah, the shortstop,
positive.
He's making lap time. Second and a half, depends on the racetrack, but a fair amount more for a short duration, probably 8-10 laps.
So a big advantage for less laps.
Yeah.
So then the guy who stops long has all of these laps with a smaller advantage.
Yes, definitely. One of those situations. And if you look at it here, his advantage is, it's what that lap time difference is between those two laps. Might be 2-3 tenths of a second. Not the second and a half it was before, but he's got it for many more laps. And if you look at this strategy-wise, what the blue guy traded out, what's up here.
Right.
That he's all going to run slower than anybody for being faster through that center section.
So the big question, the big risk in my mind is real simple. There's a risk for blue because he's pitted. So when you come to pit road, you're going to probably go a lap down. So until the other guy pits, you're a lap down for that time. So that's their risk. Mm-hmm. The risk for the guy running longer, the yellow, his risk is actually on the second half of this run because he feels good when the blue comes on to pit road. If the caution comes out, he hasn't pitted yet. He's going to look great.
Right.
Once he comes to pit road, now he has given up time. He needs that run to play out for those 2 tires that are just a little bit better. He needs all of those laps to gain it back. That's what got Larson in the middle stage. Is he basically came down, only pitted once. He had a little bit better tires. He needed the whole thing to play out. The caution got him. It basically put him behind in track position. This is Formula One racing, this is road course racing, and this is also short track racing because this is what we see at Richmond almost every time we go.
And it's one where when you come to pit road, you come out about a lap behind. So when you have that tire advantage, you can get yourself unlapped if you're a leader, if you're one of the top 5 cars. There's risk and reward played out here, but you don't know where it's going to go in the long run and whether you can fend off the traffic that's coming that was on the preferred strategy.
You want the risk for Denny Hamlin? Go back and watch the last 5 laps of the race. That is exactly right here. Denny Hamlin is the yellow line. He is faster than Martin Truex Jr., who is the blue line. He is coming. He is coming. He is coming. He gets to the 22. He can't pass the 22. He burns up his rear tires, and then, unfortunately, those 2 lap times, they overlay. His advantage is gone. His tires are heated up. That's the risk of being the guy with a little bit better tires chasing the leader down. I couldn't be more excited. Martinsville, next up, my favorite track, the paperclip, the half mile. I want to go back to Bristol a few weeks ago. I know they don't look anything alike, but they're both half mile and they're both concrete, and that's what I want to talk about.
And they're both bringing the tire they had last fall back to the spring race. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Looking forward to the weather. Looks like low 60s, should be sunshine, but again, I think a lot like what we saw at Bristol, a cooler race than what we saw last fall.
So why does that matter? Because all weekend long at Martinsville, the conversation in the garage will be, does the racetrack take rubber? These are 2 images from the fall race. Lap 17 on the left, lap 364 on the right. You see how much darker it is on the right. I question if the racetrack will even get to what lap 17 looked like in the fall.
I would be surprised. I would be surprised. Having been through this multiple times, the spring race at Martinsville, talked about this with Larry Mack about the Bristol piece after that, is that the ground temperature is just not warm enough. The track temperature doesn't get warm enough to really let the rubber lay to it. I'd be surprised if we saw it get to where lap 17 is, which tells me that this racetrack is going to be right around the curb.
All right. So knowing that, having that preparation, how do you see the weekend? What are the pitfalls for the weekend? What's the recipe to win up in Martinsville?
You got to win on Saturday. I think you got to qualify in the top 5 really to put yourself in that position. It's going to be hard to pass. I think is this racetrack, unless this tire lays way more rubber than I ever thought could be laid on a cold racetrack, I think this racetrack is very difficult to pass and make up track position. You're going to have to execute your way through the day. You got to earn the track position qualifying, and you're going to have to work on executing your way and maintaining that all day long.
I call this race, this is going to be a running game. Like in the running game in the NFL, not real flashy, not a lot of moving the ball down the field. It's going to be 3.5 yards of play every play, try to get a first down and inch your way forward. That's what Martinsville is going to be. It may take you 100 to 200 laps to go from 7th to 5th, but you can't lose your patience. You have to inch your way forward. Stay on the lead lap for the first 200, get in the top 10 for the middle 200, get in the top 5 in the last 100. Well, this way it's only a 400-lap race. I'd have to adjust, but you need to be in the top 5 in that last 100 laps. Maybe there's a restart that can go your way, but in the end, you can't make mistakes. Pit stall 1, big advantage, but we saw last year you can speed out of pit stall 1.
So in our day, pit stall 1 was great, but when we went down to 40-car fields, we eliminated pit stall 1. What is now pit stall 1, it's pit stall 2. You can, the tires are soft enough, you can make enough traction to end up speeding, leaving that pit stall. We saw that with Ryan Preece last year in the spring.
Either way, back-to-back short tracks. It's going to be a great time. Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. on FS1.